Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the webinar for Ion IVD. I'm Bruce Carlson. I head up Ion IVD, and this is Seizing the AI in IVD Opportunity, where we're going to talk about how diagnostics meets artificial intelligence. You know, you hear so much about uh, artificial intelligence and in vitro diagnostics. And a lot of the discussion we noticed is coming from tech companies or people who already have an AI product. So we wanted to find an expert in the in vitro diagnostics market field. And that's what we're doing today to talk about, where is AI really going to land in terms of this industry. Today we have joining us Greg Powell of How Sound Market Research, and I'm very pleased to have him on. We've been working with him for a while now. How Sound has been producing market research reports in this industry since 2001, right? 24
Right.
years of studying and analyzing the market. And I can say this because he probably would be humble enough not to about himself, but I can say this that folks, if you're looking at market research, don't Google. Google's the last place to go to get market research where people know about in vitro diagnostics. So just before we begin, we're going to talk about the report that this webinar is based on. And this webinar is based on our report, Artificial Intelligence in IVD, Smart In Vitro Diagnostics. It's a house sound report that we are selling. And, it is available from ionivd.com. I just want to make sure, I just want to check a visual here, getting a notice that maybe, um, let's see, that people perhaps aren't seeing, not everyone is seeing the screen. So let's just check that out and be sure that we have everyone seeing the screen. In the meantime, I want to note that the Artificial Intelligence and IVD report has 540 pages, updated regularly on a regular basis, and post-sale support is offered. So that's very, very important. Um, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Greg. First of all, thanks for coming on.
Sure. Can you hear me, Bruce?
Absolutely, loud and clear.
Okay. So thank you for that introduction, and we'll get right into it because I want to treat everyone's time valuably here. So right off the bat, we want to say that AI will drive faster growth in IVD. It's not clear to a lot of people, I think, what the impact will be of artificial intelligence on IVD, but we think that it's yet another. We've had the genomic and the COVID driving growth in IVD, but we think that AI is another one. So if we can just move on to the
I just
next
wanted
slide.
to, one thing I just wanted to emphasize is that we have that quote up there, which is a quote from you that I must admit that I pulled out because it was interest to me. And you might call me an original AI and IVD skeptic, not an AI skeptic, but just in terms of IVD, where I think we're a different industry. Maybe this isn't so important, but really, when you put it this way, AI will drive faster growth in IVD. It started to sink for me, and I hope we'll obviously prove it as we move along here, that it's not like AI is some kind of side dish, that it's actually essential for growth that everybody's looking for in IVD. And by the end of this, we'll probably see it's going to be hard to imagine how you get that growth without it. And so setting you up in those high stakes, I'll move on to the next slide for you there.
Right. Yeah, good point, Bruce. Right. So As an industry, we've done one heck of a job in terms of centralizing laboratories and cost control over the last few decades. The incremental cost of commodity testing is now very low. The example I always like to use is the comprehensive metabolic panel. 14 assays, 14 analytes, 14 results. And the reimbursement rate, let me tell you, in 2022, the reimbursement rate for Medicare was $10.56 for that 14 results. So the cost has been driven down. And what is happening is just now, we're now starting to get into that paradigm shift where instead of controlling IVD costs, driving the cost down, and limiting the number of tests that physicians are, quote, allowed to do or should do, and that the paradigm is shifting now to IVD can save money by lowering the total cost of care. So that's a big change. That's a big change because for decades, it was one of the few lines on the profit and loss line in healthcare that you could control, and that was IVD cost, and a lot of effort went into that. Now, the first example, syndromic multiplex, widely adopted now, becoming more widely adopted, and IVD has been proven to lower the total cost of care, and it's driving the adoption of syndromic multiplex. You want to read more about that, we have a special on the, and an offer to read our report on that.
Yeah,
But
you were early on in doing a whole market research and definition study on syndromic when people have been talking about it as a concept, and then the products, and now the products are here.
Right. And so what happens is that symptoms become almost irrelevant because multiplex testing it does the job for you. I mean, and even of course catches co-infections. So, but we are a conservative industry, and
Mhm.
adoption has been slow. It's taken more than a decade, and the market is still growing, and as new players are still entering. But this is a hint at a bigger picture with IVD, a bigger trend where IVD technology is replacing the physician's diagnostic role. Now, if that really is the theme of this presentation, is that in vitro diagnostic technology, in vitro diagnostics will be replacing or displacing more and more the role that the physician has in diagnosis. Not to say that the physician will not have the last word in diagnostics. There has to be accountability, organizational accountability. That's not going to change. The computer isn't going to make a decision. Artificial intelligence isn't going to make the decision. The physician will always make the decision, but increasingly, the physician's diagnosis will be guided by in vitro intelligent, artificially intelligent in vitro diagnostic results.
Okay, and we'll jump over to the and we'll get more into that because I think that's gonna raise a lot of questions there, Greg.
Okay. Okay. So this is how we at House on Research. This is how we look at in vitro diagnostics, and we're just looking at the picture today. We look, of course, accuracy and certification, table stakes as far as we're concerned for entry to the market. Ease of use, especially with point of care, it's becoming increasingly important, but that's going to become table stakes. Price, most assays today are commodity tests, and we already talked about the commodity test pricing and how low the cost of IVD really has become for most tests, but it's driven by value scope. We'll talk about scope. Trust brand is important, but especially in moving into the point of care world, trust brand is increasingly important. But the basis of competition today is the scope of the diagnosis. And for to give you examples, a couple of examples, syndromic testing, you've obviously increased the scope of the diagnosis. People are able to charge more for a syndromic test because you get 27 results instead of a single result. Cancer profiling, we're talking billings in the thousands of dollars per test for cancer profiling. Cologuard, a great example. And that scope of diagnosis, increasing it, that's where the money is. That's where the profit margins are, and that's where the market is going. And of course, the other thing today that's very important is we're moving from days,
Mhm.
days and hours to minutes in terms of.
Are you thinking sepsis there? Are you thinking GI, all of the above?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, yeah. And if we go into the next slide, you'll see here. So here we go. Higher scope commands higher price. That's the bottom line. And as we move more into the artificial intelligence, you can see that we start to have a growth in intelligence of the scope. Perfect
Mhm.
example is sepsis diagnostics. We have a report on sepsis diagnostics, and as we said several years ago, that's moving to an algorithmic approach based on a number of different biomarkers. And it's a perfect example of how artificial intelligence is going to be applied to uh, to in vitro diagnostics, grow the scope of the diagnostic assay, and grow the market. So I think a good example here, I'll mention a company, not just because they bought our artificial intelligence report, but I would like to mention Luventix. They've got a urinalysis, and it's
Mhm.
based entirely really on pattern recognition of gas chromatography urinalysis. And they're talking about basically doing a lung cancer diagnosis based on a simple urinalysis test and a gas chromatography of
Let
the
me get
urine.
into it just a
So
tiny bit because if it's an example of kind of a real world example that you've isolated as perhaps something that might point to the future, what is it about, say, gas chromatography that may lend itself to an artificial intelligence solution versus, the doctor looking and making their own diagnosis?
so yeah, so gas chromatography. I'm a chemist by nature, and I've done a lot of chromatography myself, and it creates spikes and a certain pattern of as the chromatographic procedure
Mhm.
progresses, it produces this pattern of biomarkers that are produce characteristic signals in the chromatographic results. So uh, it lends itself to pattern recognition. Now, before, as the Luventix will be happy to tell you, before the pattern recognition was uh, based on studying individual biomarkers and
Mhm.
having those biomarkers be studied and analyzed and measuring them. But with Leventix, they're moving to just looking at the gas chromatographic pattern and and using pattern recognition technology to suggest that this matches with the patterns that we've seen in other lung cancer patients. So this is a completely different approach
Mhm.
to it to our business, to in vitro diagnostics. Did I answer your question, Bruce?
Oh yeah, no, I think it's an
Yeah.
interesting to provide a real world example so that there are actual products behind some of these various boxes and concepts that we're talking about. Uh,
Exactly, and that's why I brought them up because it was just it's just a great example of where we're going. And you can see how in for instance, cardiology, just in your standard ECG,
Hmm.
you can see how pattern recognition can play a big role in that. So that's one of the areas. And then now further down, maybe a decade away or more than a decade away, you start to bring in data from healthcare records. You start to bring in data about more comprehensive data about the patient, and then you start to apply artificial intelligence to that, so that you're looking at an IVD changing significantly as a result of artificial intelligence.
And
So
yeah, we get to smart in vitro diagnostics.
right, smart in vitro diagnostics, which is of course the name of the report here. Now, the diagnosis job is essentially done by the lab almost before the patient exam is complete. Faster care, less guesswork, less physician timing. We've got, for those of you who remember the old Star Trek, the original Star Trek, there was Dr. McCoy, and he had a thing called a tricorder, and he would just scan the patient and basically say whether it was an alien or a human being, which of course in a way we could do now with whole genome sequencing. But
We need a POC
and then he
unit.
right, and so he would diagnose the patient. He's got the scanner in his hand. He's scanning the patient here. But what I want to suggest to you, and this is, I'm not saying this is happening tomorrow,
Mhm.
but and certainly we're not going to be scanning patients. We're still going to have a blood draw for a long time, but we're moving toward this Star Trek tricorder type future where more diagnostics, more in vitro diagnostics is done at the beginning uh, by the lab as part of the diagnostic process,
Mhm.
and that's the future. That's where artificial intelligence will be taking in vitro diagnostics, and of course, what's helping it is this very low price for commodity testing. So yeah, and
Should we go over
next slide.
here yet? Okay. And
Yeah.
I just
So
wanted to say, though, I think that's interesting, that concept. I think you saw companies, are probably going to talk about it in later. We saw companies trying to do things like this. The tricorder, whether it's called that or not, has long been the quest, and the getting an amount of diagnosis information to where, sure, the doctor's always going to have that control, right? But if I have this right, it will create so much information and lead down a path so long that the doctor's decision is like, well, you can go against the AI and everything. You still have that option. You're the human. You don't lose that. But there's so much here that really you should consider. You should consider what the AI said.
that's right. Now yeah, that's exactly where it's going. That it's going where the physician is going to be put in a tough place because they're going to have to say, hmm, what is AI telling me?
Hmm.
And what am I thinking? And if you read some of the reports about some of the things in terms of pathology slides and analysis and radiology and reading of radio X-rays and the like, you see that there is conflict between what artificial intelligence is saying and what physicians like to diagnose and like to interpret. So the paradigm shift here: initial diagnose, test, and then retest. We're moving into a world where there's more extensive testing that provides diagnostic probabilities and allows the physician to assess the results and treat. So again, it's that what we started out saying, the the physician's role in the diagnostic process is increasingly supplanted by in vitro diagnostic testing.
It sounds negative the way you say that, though, and I don't know
Oh,
that you
yeah.
mean it. I don't know that you mean it. Could if I rephrased it, that the doctor's role in diagnosis might be supplanted, and that doctor may hardly even miss it. Would that be accurate?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I
You know
know
what?
in the doctor's
Let
lounge
me,
they're going to complain a bit about it, but I really mean
no,
what I
but I
said.
mean, syndromic multiplex testing is the first
Mm,
thing. The doctor does not have to do extensive respiratory
mm.
diagnostic or history taking, etc., to 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 complete the diagnosis because the syndromic test provides the infectious disease answer completely and does the heavy lifting for for the doctor. So there you go. AI will drive faster growth than IVD, increasing the scope, increasing the price. And so today, testing scope is based on the physician's diagnosis and what the physician decides to order based on their original diagnosis. Syndromic testing is right now it's really a first mover in this artificial intelligence, or I'm going to say in this idea of in vitro diagnostics helping the physician more in the diagnostic process and in increasingly becoming an artificial intelligence source of diagnostic detective work. So today, tests are ordered sparingly. We're moving away from that. More and more, the as the price of testing is so low, more and more the discouragement of over testing is not as high a priority. And today, coverage decisions, slow adoptions. We have a commodity test and a panel approach, and really the physician's preliminary diagnosis drives the test-based investigation. In the future, you're going to see IVD tests of broader scope and intelligence, and they're going to be oriented to answering the diagnostic question. We got genomics here, which I haven't even mentioned yet, and Roche made the SBX announcement, and the SBX announcement is just one more step where even the sequencing is
Mm.
yet again, and we've all seen that long dropping curve in price per base pair for sequencing and how it's gone down and went down with next generation sequencing. Well, here we're even going further. SBX is promising to drop the price of sequencing even more. So
And I mean, how
genomics
do
is even
you,
coming into
yeah,
the play of.
and
Go
you,
ahead.
it seems natural to relate that to AI, right? Because you're going to be producing more information from a patient.
Absolutely.
Someone's staff is going to be incredibly stressed. There's only so much technical staff that can read and handle all of this, and not everyone will be trained in the hospital setting. So, yeah, it seems like we can almost just go ahead and say more genomics, more AI. Which, if we were talking, in clinical diagnostics, if we were talking 5 years ago, that might have not have been a real conversation.
Well, you know, genomics information is an area where you really have to consider that the complexity, the sheer amount of data. I mean, the Foundation Medicine test was what 435 different genes were being measured and assessed in different ways. The sheer number and complexity, you wonder at a certain point would go beyond the ability of human beings to process this and
Mhm.
and to work with this kind of information. And of course, as you said, artificial intelligence, machine learning. there's no compunction. They don't worry about the size of the data set so much. So natural fit. So in the future, IVD takes on more and more a screening role. You can see that in with the syndromic multiplex again, with the infectious disease, where they're starting to apply syndromic multiplex as a general purpose test there. Of course, they all include COVID, and so in terms of controlling infectious disease in the
Mm-hmm.
hospital setting, you can see syndromic multiplex taking on that screening role. And in the future, of course, the screening role will move beyond infectious disease to to other kinds of screening tests that might be indicated for certain patients. So what we're predicting is that IVD and AI together or AI assisted IVD, if you
Mm-hmm.
will creep slowly into clinics and physicians' offices. And what we're suggesting is that we're going to see that creep in on the point of care instruments on an instrument by instrument basis, and that then the centralized lab will start to adopt some of the innovations that we're going to see in the point of care instruments. So I'm
Interesting.
going out on a limb here. We're making
Yes,
a
we like
prediction,
that. We like that. But
but
it
it's speculation. But
define
we that's the
instrument.
kind of future we see.
I love it. I love it, Greg. Define instrument by instrument. Does that mean there'll be a few first movers and others will follow? Is that what you mean by instrument? Okay.
Exactly. Because you think that, when you have an instrument and the instrument does, for instance, I'm going to make this up, but the instrument does a comprehensive metabolic panel,
Hmm.
right? So it naturally, if that's the only thing the instrument does, you can imagine an instrument that did an artificial intelligence diagnosis, obviously limited to start because it's only got the comprehensive metabolic panel, but
Hmm.
it could suggest, well, this pattern suggests A, B, C, and D. And that's the kind of future we're imagining.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, and
And
then
yep.
further down the road is you're going to start to see that the artificial intelligence will start to provide risk assessment information and diagnostic probabilities, so that you get the test result back and it may say, 98% probability of type 2 diabetes,
Hmm.
for example. And you know, so we've got a great example in the report where we talk about an emergency room situation, and it's kind of a scenario. So yeah,
Well,
we'll leave that to be in the
speaking of
report.
that report, let's mention it. What we're talking about today, Greg and House Sound working with I and IVD, um, has Greg has developed a AI and IVD market research reports. It's called Smart in vitro diagnostics, but that's exactly what it's talking about, which is the use of AI and IVD. But if you call it AI and IVD, as we are, that is the general term, that's kind of a flat negative term. Smart in vitro diagnostics is talking about the positive benefits of it, and that's where this report goes. We can only talk about so much in this webinar. So, how do you get more to start doing your business planning? We mentioned maybe two companies during this time because our time's limited. There's lots of more examples in this report. It's 540 pages. And the good thing about House Sound is that they offer uh, if you get the report and you have questions and they're within the scope of the report, they'll help out. But it's already starting with a good base of information, some of which we're talking about. There's an offer for those who have attended the webinar. So we're not just giving this broadly, but for those who have attended the webinar, signed up, if you get the AI and IVD Smart Diagnostics market research report for 50% off, we'll also include the syndromic test markets. We'll include that report at 50% off. We already talked about the connection between these two areas and why they're so tightly connected, and you probably need to research about both. Anything I missed, Greg? Anything we should mention about these reports?
No, no, I think that I think that the syndromic is like a precursor, like a the start where in vitro diagnostics starts to move into to more a more aggressive role in providing a more central role in providing diagnosis. And I think the two reports together, if you read them, we have a part in the reports called the situation analysis,
Hmm.
where it's just 2 or 3 pages, and it really looks at what the strategic situation in terms of the marketplace is, and where we think it's going. And one of the toughest things I think to do in the diagnostic business and in the biotechnology business is to forecast the speed and the timing of
Hmm.
change.
Hmm.
And our approach is to set out a direction, and we do make our best efforts at saying, look, we think this is in the next 5 years, or this is in the next 3 years, and this is more in the next decade. And we try to look at things from that perspective.
I'm
So
gonna,
that's what the
great. I'm gonna
reports provide you.
No, that's wonderful. And we do have a little bit more content just in case you're thinking these guys have gone into the sales mode of the we are singing for our supper a little bit at the end here, but we do have another slide. I did though want to get into uh this area that we talk about. We talk about two reports. One thing that we have is subscriptions. And so Greg's company, he works very hard. 37 reports that are available. We've listed them here. And roughly for the price of four of them, that would have cost you, you can get a subscription for all of them and be able to kind of search through them and read them all. And it's really economical. Subscriptions are really the way to do it because reports interlock. I mean, eventually, if you're talking about any test market, well, you might want to have the quality controls. Genetic testing is going to play into this role. We talked about syndromic, we talked about biomarkers, we talked about the tricoder, which kind of lends itself to that concept to the point of care molecular as they get more advanced and things like that. So there are reports on all of these things, each one's in that kind of detail, and you can get it for a a pretty fair price. When I see 34 reports for the price of four, and I promise I will take my sales hat off in a second and go to the next content slide. I just wanted to say that having worked in market research, I can think of at some diagnostic companies in the research department, and CFOs are going to really be pleased with that kind of number compared to other research that I know is available and I know that companies religiously subscribe to. So if you're looking, like if you're having some budgetary concerns and you still want quality research, it may be a good option to think about us. And we'll send out this presentation. We have this list of these reports, and we'll let you know about it, and we can talk to you and about like what pricing would be and such. With that, I'll jump over to the last slide. Of course, if you want to say more about that, please. But
No, no, I think you've done a good job. Uh, we do look at individual market segments within the in vitro diagnostics industry. And if that's what you're interested in a deep dive in individual segments, that's what we've got. And of course, you have a situation analysis that allows you to get a very good handle on certainly what we think is going on in that particular market segment. So let's get to the last slide here. Is IVD's looking at big change. I think I hate to mention Theranos, and everyone does, but we're a conservative industry,
Mhm.
and I don't think that's going to change. And Theranos looms large.
It's still hard to
So
talk
it's
about
not.
a capillary testing without even the companies that do it now successfully have to end up dealing with reporters who bring up Theranos. So yeah, we haven't shaken it. It's an internal culture that we have, and then also it's foisted upon us. Oh, that sounds like Theranos, so we have to deal with it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a shame because as an industry, I can't tell you how proud I am to be associated with the in vitro diagnostics industry because I think that we have done an incredible job in lowering costs and in delivering incredible quality. And I truly believe that. And I know many of the people who we work with. I know that they believe the same. And I think we're an excellent industry. So I'm not saying that we're moving too slow, but I'm just saying that be ready that this isn't going to happen overnight. Where there's going to be caution. First
Okay.
wave, of course, is the image-based pattern recognition. And that would, of course, in vitro would be the pathology slides. And of course, we've seen it in the imaging business where the pattern recognition is actually, it's looking like it's doing a better job. It's statistically speaking, and I hate to say that, but that's what it's looking
No, I
like. Of
mean,
course,
I think if you look at imaging, the imaging folks who I deal with quite often, we might have Brian Casey over at the Imaging Wire on this call. I think it's not even I go as far as to say it's the issues have been resolved in that space. It's part of the program. Not every technology wins, but it's part of the program. And the big issues over are you replacing the radiologist have been on the battlefield and fought already. Whereas in IVD, and because it also involves some more touchy issues, and AI is great at pattern recognition and anything visual, of course. So that's made it easier. But some of the cultural issues around it, some have been resolved in imaging. And so we could look there as long as we have a technology that's adequate and it starts to get helpful in IVD. It seems that way.
right, right. So the real future of AI will involve increasingly this diagnostic role for IVD, where IVD will suggest diagnostics and even suggest the probability of a diagnostic accuracy. And it may seem far-fetched, but that's where we're going. I mean, that's the big vision. That's the direction of AI in vitro diagnostics, and just some of the applications that are coming into view in cardiology, oncology. We talked about genomics, and you can certainly see AI working with cancer profiling test results and providing insights into that data. So all of this means that AI is going to drive faster growth in IVD. Uh, we're going to be moving away from there's going to be higher prices for tests that incorporate AI and thereby increase the diagnostic scope of the assay. And we've got some data in the reports that you'll see where we look at what's happened to the test menu over the last decade. And the test menu, in terms of the number of tests, largely driven by nucleic acid-based testing, the test menu has skyrocketed, and the average test menu price has skyrocketed and surged. And we're expecting that as AI applications increasingly are integrated with IVD, that we're going to see even more growth in the test menu and a surge in the average price.
I have a few
There you
questions
go.
that have come up. Great. So we still have folks with us, which is always good. And a few questions have come up. Some came earlier, and we're getting to them now. This one on the syndromic testing. If it's a first mover, why have payers capped the number of pathogens that they will cover, such that if the panel selected is deemed too large, they will deny payment completely for the test? So it's kind of what the person is asking, if I have this right, is essentially, we're saying it's a syndromics testing's a first mover, but can you speak to payer challenges in syndromic?
Well, look, from the payers' point of view, they've got a couple of problems in that they've got the problem of what to charge for, because they're charging on a per assay basis now, and so syndromic automatically can multiply that if it's charged out on that basis. That's one problem. The other problem is that uh, more testing means more investigation, more costs, more medical costs, and the payers are obviously have a natural inclination to to try to reduce costs, and especially that controllable cost of IVD. I think that, and that's what we started out saying, I
Hmm.
think that that's changing. We think that's changing, and we think that the acceptance, the better acceptance, it's not complete, but the better acceptance of symptomic testing and how it can lower the total cost of care, we think that that message will eventually get through to payers.
And yeah,
So
that's
it's
one of the
not hasn't completely today by
hasn't
any means.
completely. One of the questions we got is actually a comment from Robert L. Testing is also determined by what the health insurance will cover, and that's what we were just talking about. Someone asked us, do you receive two updated reports after purchase? Yes, how sound you will update this artificial intelligence report on a regular basis. It depends on
Yeah,
developments.
now, the artificial intelligence report in the last 6 months has been updated 3 times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and anyone who purchases the report gets all the updates for the next year from the date that they purchase it. And of course, subscribers, of course, automatically get it, because when they go into their database, they will see the latest report. They will not see the previous reports. So the reports are we update all reports. Our goal is, I must say that there's a handful of reports that we've only hit one update per year last year, but we try to get almost all the reports updated at least twice a year, and with the current information, and that's what people receive when they purchase the report.
No, really, that's incredible when you can compare it to the market, and if we can even call it competition. See, I, as the eye on IVD here, I can be freer to talk about that competition that I see on the internet, and that are producing reports based on information they also obtained, probably either from other reports or the internet and things like that. And it's a real problem in our industry. And so updating helps, because now you keep checking your figures and everything in the report against real world information. We did get a question here from Patrick. I don't know if you'd have an answer, but I'll throw it out. If not, I also have
Okay.
another one. What I know this isn't Stump the Band. If we're only here talking about AI and IVD, why isn't sepsis screened for in the emergency department at triage?
That's um, I'm not sure that there is a diagnostic test that
That could be useful at this point.
that that would be useful. And I think the state of the
Hmm.
art in sepsis diagnostics today is more a symptomatic based
Hmm. Hmm.
observation, and then trying to remember a lot of the testing is still on a 24-hour turnaround time.
So getting faster.
And
See, this question, the answer could change. If we do this again in December, we might answer this question differently. But I think
exactly.
right now, because there's a couple that have come out that are checking and giving scores, but I still agree. I believe that even
See,
those newer products with the score-based or multiple tests, multiple biomarker tests, are still going to take some time, and usually are ordered with some type of symptomatic condition. But if you
oh,
could get to a test at the ED, a screening test, that would be great.
yeah, no, the sepsis area is, I mean, we said 4 years ago, we said that algorithmic biomarker based testing, and of course, resulting in a score is a classic way of doing that. And that's the way that the market is going. And of course, those are starting to come into the market now. And and we think that that's just going to continue to happen. And these kind of the Luventix example, you can see how a Luventix type approach could could be valuable in sepsis diagnostics, and especially as a screening test. It's just it just incredible possibilities, and sepsis is just physicians in many ways have felt helpless, when confronted with sepsis
Well, still
because
trying to
whether or not
define
a
it. I mean,
patient's
there's constant standard changes. I mean, we're getting closer. They just did a pediatric definition. But yeah, it's a continuous process, and people want better tools. Um, I did want to say we probably have about 5 more minutes if someone wanted to ask a question before we conclude. We do appreciate everyone who's joined us and for being patient during our discussion and listening to our talk about reports and things. But I did want to ask about, I should ask about DeepSeek. Any thoughts on that? That's been a kind of a on the mainstream news in not in our industry necessarily. DeepSeek is kind of, caught everybody unawares and and
Well,
really, yeah.
let me say this about that.
Okay.
Uh, DeepSeek, it really, to me, we talked about this in our office. Really, to me, it drove home that message and almost amazement, how quickly artificial intelligence the technology is moving along faster than certainly than we predicted, and it's amazing how and how good it is. I don't know if you've used DeepSeek, but we took it for a test run,
Hmm.
and it is astounding. It's an incredible product, but it just demonstrates that we're being conservative in our outlook.
Hmm.
But it this AI future with in vitro diagnostics could come at us faster than we even think, and faster than I've been suggesting in this presentation. It really is, that DeepSeek really is, and if you look at the number of AI products on the market today, and you're going to start to see our vision of where AI is going is that AI will splinter, and you will have specialist AI areas, and you've already got, I think it's Google who's doing a science-based AI tool, and you can see AI specializing in certain areas, and of course you could imagine AI entirely devoted to IVD. But I'm just speculating.
That is quite a future, and that's what we've been speaking to. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. A reminder about the report that this is based on. Again, it's 540 pages. It's pretty substantial as a market research report. 24 years experience. We're not talking about people who do like handbags this week and then IVD the next week. And the other key is that it's updated on a regular basis. So just what we talked about, DeepSeek, right? There could be new technologies coming out. If you purchase an AI and IVD market report off the internet, you're going to wait a year till they have a next edition or whatever, and it won't pick up the changes that are necessary. This report is your friend in that it will be updated on a regular basis. We say two times is the guide, two times in a 12-month period, but in some cases it's even more frequent as developments happen. So I would consider purchasing that. You're if you're representing a company, it's likely you have a budget for these type of tools. You just may want to consider how you portion that out. Maybe you're using a research provider that's a little more static, and their AI and IVD is hasn't been updated, and you want something that is more frequent. Consider us. Consider this report, and maybe if it's something you like, you would consider more. So from I on IVD and How Sound Research. First, Greg, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
And everyone, we got good representation for all the companies. I want to thank Patrick and Robert and Jason for their questions that they asked us today. If you have more questions, send us an email. We'll get to that. And you should also be hearing from us at ionivd.com with developments and new things that we have. If you have an idea, for instance, you just want to talk to us, we're very open to, say, partnerships or working with people, trying to solve a problem that they have. It doesn't have to necessarily be a conversation about a report. We want to talk to people in this industry, and Greg and I are both folks that want to improve this industry. Thanks again, and we will conclude the webinar now.